Hello, I am Lisa Gardner, the co-founder of OMS Strategic Advisors and host of the Uncompromise Podcast, where we have an unwavering commitment to values, beliefs, authenticity, integrity, and character that brings heart and care to an organization. I'm bringing you some of the brightest, most business uncompromised executives and thought leaders to discuss challenging corporate norms. Today, we are honored to introduce Jordan A. Miller Jr., a stalwart business and community advisor hailing from Columbus, Ohio. As the pioneering chairman and CEO of Adelphi Bank, Jordan's vision has been instrumental in shaping the landscape of community banking. Not only is Adelphi the 21st Black-owned bank in the nation, but it's also the very first in Ohio. From serving as the regional chairman at the Fifth Third Bank to earning an honorary doctorate from Franklin University, Jordan's journey is a testament to dedication, leadership, and community service. His vast experience, coupled with his passion for expanding opportunities in affordable housing and supporting minority enterprises, has made him a beacon in the finance world. Welcome, Jordan.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. That's an awesome introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, I don't take it lightly, the guests that say yes. And it's been an honor to truly read the rich bios of the guests that we've had, and especially yours. Your bio is so impressive, Jordan. As I looked at your bio, one of the first questions that came to mind was, if you were to narrow down the top 3 experiences that you've had throughout your lifetime that's helped you to navigate, manage, plan, and execute successfully in bringing the first African-American owned bank to Ohio, what would those be?
Well, Lisa, that's a tough one. I did pick 3 things, but I'll tell you, it really started for me when I was a young guy in the Air Force. I had some challenges at Ohio State University with I was an intern at an accounting firm. And that internship lasted 1 day. And it was the most heart-wrenching thing I'd ever been through in my life at that time. I just completed my freshman year.
Yes.
And I talked to my mom and my dad about this internship. I was so excited. My mom told me, cut your hair. Yeah, I had big afro. And I wasn't ready for it. And I didn't think it was a big deal. Well, it turned out it was a big deal. And that internship lasted 1 day. Because of how it happened, it frustrated me, and I just dropped out of college. I dropped out and went into the Air Force. And after I'd been in the Air Force a little while, I got to travel. That was really the first time I got to travel. And so that travel overseas to Thailand really just made me wise. It just made me realize, because when I went in the Air Force, they cut all my hair off anyway. It changed me. So that's one experience. I won't elaborate any more there, but that was a great one. I would say my second experience was shortly after that, when I had completed my college, and I was a bank examiner for the comptroller of the currency. They are charged with examining national banks. So it's very similar to an accounting role, only you're doing an examination of a bank. And you're learning everything you can about banking and all the different departments, from credit and audit and operations and commercial lending. And that was another experience. We had a few challenges with some of these rural banks I used to go into back in those days. By that time, I had regrown my afro, and a lot of these small rural communities weren't seeing a Black man in their neighborhood or in their little town eating lunch. That caused a few issues. And then finally, I'd say the biggest hurdle that I had to overcome on my journey to at Fifth Third Bank, I had been running successfully their broker-dealer. I was the president of Fifth Third Securities. I had moved there as they had bought another company, and they needed somebody to run that company, and my qualifications and background fit. They hired me. Had been well into that journey. We'd made a lot of substantive changes and had that program going the right way. My boss told me that he was going to top grade me. In other words, he was going to bring in someone over me and make me report to that person instead of him. And all 3 of those were different challenges that I faced. And I successfully, some kind of way, overcame each one of them. And in that last situation, I ended up looking at a job outside of the bank. I don't know how my boss found out what I was doing, but he called me and he just pleaded with me to stay and told me that he was going to rechange the organizational chart to the guy that he wanted me to report to. I was going to flip it, and I was going to take over that guy's responsibility. So those were three big things for me.
So when I look at those three big things, I'm actually seeing adversity, of course, but you used it to fuel yourself to the next level. Am I correct in stating that?
In every one of those situations, it did. Like my first one with the Air Force, or actually with Ohio State and dropping out there, it took me a while because I was really bitter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was really, really bitter about what had happened and the fact that Ohio State, who had asked me to go do the internship, didn't stand next to me when I came back to them the next day to talk about the issue, and they weren't having it. It was all my fault. I later in life, I guess, as I was traveling, I was overseas, and I was reflecting back on that experience. I thought, what could I have done different? And I thought through it, and I probably wouldn't have done anything different. I may have not taken the internship or just accepted it, but not let it get in the way of my college.
Mm-hmm.
But I basically tried to put it back to what I could do, not what they could do. There was nothing, I couldn't control them. I could only control me. And so I got over it.
And you kept going.
Of course, you got to keep going. It's like riding a bicycle. As soon as you stop, what happens?
Exactly. Well, when I think of the first experience, I think how the Crown Act has helped a lot with what you were talking about with your first experience. But when I think of your second and third experience, here's my next leading question is, what are the systemic barriers that you're seeing for African Americans in the finance world as it pertains to housing, let alone owning a financial institution? Can you talk about some of those things?
Yeah, I tell you, when I came in this business, there's always somebody before you. Mm-hmm. You might feel like you're on an island. You're the only one. But when I went to the comptroller of the currency, even though I felt very isolated because of the numbers, folks, and it just wasn't a lot of minorities. There were a few.
Right.
And we collaborated. I got to know some of them, and they gave me some good advice on how to handle mostly different individuals that I would run across.
Right.
And then, but and even today, I look forward today, and I look at my accomplishments at Fifth Third, and I look at all of the people that I brought along, or helped mentor and help navigate a fairly sizable corporation with pretty complex entities and divisions, and requiring different skill sets at different levels. Mm-hmm. And I just think of the number, and I look back on Fifth Third now, and I look at their diversity team, and the head of their commercial group is an African American. The head of their ESG effort is an African American. They've got board members that are African American, and I'd like to think that I played a little bit of role in helping them push them to change that organization, which was lily white. I'll say this one other thing.
Yes.
When my very, very first meeting, when I got to Fifth Third, my very first meeting with the CEO, we used to do these meetings, and this one was about the investment division, which I had been hired to run a piece of that division, which was the broker-dealer. Fifth Third Securities was a piece of that investment division. Mm-hmm. I walked into the room, big boardroom. I counted 26 white guys and one black guy. That was me. There was no other diversity in that room. And when I looked around the room, every single guy, every single one, of course, we all had to wear a suit and tie. Mm-hmm. Every single one had a white shirt on, and most of them were button-down white shirts, which, if you know this industry, button-down white shirt is probably the most conservative shirt that you could have in your closet, and to be a banker. But that was the room I walked into, and I remember reflecting on when I left, that room looked a lot different.
Now that is encouraging. Now, let me ask you I know you played a big part in that room looking different. And what do you think is the largest contribution you made, the fact that you were able to leave and that room look so different than when you walked in?
Well, the first thing, I had hiring power. So my division, I had hiring power. When I walked in and I looked at our team, didn't like what I saw. Had some really good people, really smart people, but it wasn't a very diverse group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And no women, just men.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing we did was start changing some of those things as soon as I got the opportunity. The national sales manager didn't like me and tried to tell me that he could leave and take the entire team with him if I didn't do some things for him. I gave him that chance because I fired him on the spot.
Right.
HR was all over me. They didn't like the way I did it, but he was gone. And
Right.
I hired a female to take his place. So I think the other things that I did, I had a conversation with my boss, and my boss, we were just challenging conversations about what our industry was and what we're doing. And he said, Jordan, I really would like to help you change. I see your passion around some issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to get more people in the room like you. And he says, how can I do it? He says, because my Rolodex is full of guys that look like me. He said his Rolodex is full of guys that look like him. And of course, he's a white guy. And I totally, that made a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I've got a Rolodex of a lot of people that look like me. So maybe there's a few that I can send to you and see if they're fit for what you're trying to do. Let me know what you're looking for. And what I found, to be honest, Lisa,
Yes.
they would jump all over the black women, black guys, not so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, we started there but we didn't end there. So, but that was a very important conversation early that I had about still fairly early in my career at Fifth Third Bank.
Exactly. So why is it you think that there was more, I have my own thoughts, but why do you think there was more of a comfortable base with starting with Black women than Black men?
Well, I think sometimes Black women are a little bit smarter on how they communicate than Black men.
Mm-hmm.
There were certain words that Black men won't tolerate, and sometimes we can be a little stubborn. And just to be honest, I think their social skills are sometimes a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're a lot smarter than us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a testament to probably with their backgrounds and where they came from and how they had to grow up and how they had to probably bow down to men throughout their lives. So they knew how to handle men. So I think that could be part of the reason anyway. That makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. I've heard that feedback before with just not women of color, but women in general. One thing, I have a male business partner. So when we walk into a room, oftentimes when we do a debrief at the end of the meeting, I'm able to give him a deeper sense of the nonverbal cues that I picked up in the room, as well as verbal cues, right? Versus he can give a debrief of the business points and what was the result of what people said. But that's very interesting that you said that. I think that's women in general. So it doesn't surprise me that might have been a reason, of course.
Absolutely.
Yes. So what has been, I know you've talked about some challenges, but as you began the process of forming Adelphi Bank, what were some of the largest challenges that you faced and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, so we had a lot of challenges along the way. The very first, we got into a lot of meetings. It was about a 2.5-year process to get the bank off the ground. Mm-hmm. Early on, some of the meetings that I had were with the regulators. So I met frequently with the FDIC and the state bank regulators. Mm-hmm. And I'd put a budget before them and showed them what it was going to take to open the bank. And they thought I was spending too much money, that I was going to spend too much money and that I wouldn't be profitable. And the conversation really there is, this is a minority institution. It's going to be a Black-owned and a Black-led institution. Mm-hmm. And why is it more expensive for us to do this work? Mm-hmm. And I said, if you've given that feedback to other minority members, that's probably why there's only 20 Black-owned banks in the country. I said, because the bar is still higher. Our community has more needs. Our community is tougher to deal with. Our community has more challenges based on years and years and years of historic stuff that's handed down from the government. And it's a lot of implicit in it. I'm not blaming anybody in this room. Mm-hmm. But if you want to see more diverse organizations under your supervision, then you're going to have to adjust to the fact that the Black banks that are coming along are going to be a lot different than probably the ones that you've seen. And if you really want to be a partner with Black banks, you're going to have to understand that we're going to probably be a little bit more expensive initially. We have the tools to be successful. We have the talent, we have the drive, we have the ambition, but to get off the ground, it's going to take a little bit more work. And that was the message to them, and they took it well to their benefit. They took it well. I had a lot of offline conversations with individuals in that room from the regulatory side that day, and they'd never heard that.
Yes.
So I think that was an important conversation early in the process.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, anytime that something is new, innovative, really hasn't been done a lot, it often takes more resources. It often takes a little more push, let alone a little more financial resources. So I'm sure things did look different. What other challenges did you see?
Well, we had a few egos in the room. I had great business partners. We pulled in some great board members. I had to hire an executive team of people, so I needed a chief credit officer. That was hard to find. I needed a CFO. That wasn't easy to find, but I had a good one.
Right.
And then I needed a technology guy, and there were different conflicts. I don't want to say bad necessarily, but there were conflicts in us and how we communicated, how we worked together. All of us had a lot of experience. That wasn't the issue, but all of us had diverse experience coming from different organizations, and we had different opinions about how we wanted this bank to run and operate. And since I was going to be the CEO, I needed to say, no, I feel really strong about this. If I'm going to be involved, if I'm going to lead this organization and you're going to come on my team, then these are the things we're going to have to work together on. And we had a lot of come to Jesus meetings. Later in the process, another big challenge was actually raising the money. So you can't start raising the money until you get what they call conditional approval. So conditional approval means, hey, we looked at everything in your application. We looked at all your background. We looked at everything that you're planning to do. And we agree with it under these conditions. The biggest condition is to raise the money. We had to raise $20 million. I wanted to raise a little bit more than that, but I based my business plan on 20, and we ended up raising 25 million. So
what did you look for in your investors?
Well, I looked for patient investors. People had to understand. I needed investors to understand that this is not going to be a quick return. Right. It's a heavy lift. We're going to move a community forward. We plan on helping a community build wealth, and we plan on helping people that are underserved. Those people are going to payday lenders today. They're going to buy here places today, and we plan to help them get out of that. The ones that want to, they want to change their life. Right. We want them to change their life. And that message, I think, resonated. I had to have an impact statement, so to speak, with investors. This is the impact we're going to make. This is how we're going to change. This is how it's going to be better when everyone in our community is moving along. This is how Columbus, Ohio gets to fulfill its dream. This is how Columbus, Ohio gets to improve. And we talk about what a great city we live in, and it's not for half the people, but not for all of the people. And our goal is to make it at least better for that other half that's not being included.
So when I look, so the motivation for the investors was more of the impact versus how quickly the return. You made them really focus in on the impact. Again, more community driven, community servant kind of. So how did you vet through to find those investors that were patient? I think the listeners would be curious about that.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I was being a CEO and chairman of the bank here for Fifth Third Bank in Central Ohio.
Yes.
I was on the Columbus Partnership, which is a group of, at the time, about 50, 60 CEOs in town of the largest companies. So some Fortune 500 companies here, as well as some large middle market companies. So that was my network. I knew that in the very first presentation I made was to the Columbus Partnership, and it was, we're starting a bank, and here's what the bank's going to look like, and here's the impact I plan to have. I'm coming out of, I'd retired from Fifth Third, and I was coming out of retirement to help start this bank for this purpose. And I asked them for their support,
Right.
and to a team, most of them did. So I worked with some of them on messaging, and we worked with some of them on their investment.
Mhm.
Some of them gave me referrals to other people that they thought would be helpful in this mission.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, what they really wanted, they wanted someone in this seat that they trusted, that they felt good about. So that was the business community.
Mhm.
On the in our community, it was a little different, but most of the folks in the African American community were looking more for the return, um, and typically their investments were going to be a little bit smaller. So
Yes.
we had to focus on the return metrics with some of them, but we also had to focus on the impact. So
Yes.
it was a combination of things. We had to focus different audiences requiring different things. Church pastors wanting to make sure that the needs of their congregation were met. They wanted to make sure that this wasn't just a money grab, something I was starting just going to make a bunch of money for me and not for the community. And
That's right.
so they had those things. And once they saw the team and they saw the business plan, and we had a lot of conversations, they saw we were in it for the right reason.
Absolutely. One thought that came to my mind is I would think that your impact investors maybe did come outside of the African American community. I feel like there is I just feel like there is a heart outside of African American community that where there's a larger population of those that are of non-color that want to figure out how they can pour in and help and make a difference. And so that was the reason I was asking the question, to see if that was your answer.
And that is very true. Exactly what you said. It's
Mhm.
they want to see impact. They want to feel good about
Exactly.
their investment. They all have
Yes.
ESG strategies,
Yes.
DEI strategies.
Absolutely. That's what I was thinking. Absolutely. So, and you've touched on this a little bit, but I want to ask you more directly of how do you think you have changed the banking industry? What indelible mark are you leaving?
Well, I probably changed it more in my pioneering years when I was a young guy and had a lot of energy. Today is a different it's a little
Right.
different today. I
Right.
mean, not definitely not a pioneer anymore. We got a lot of them. We got a lot of African American banks. I meet with these other 20 or so African American banks. We have an association called the National Bankers Association. I
Yes.
was at a conference with them last week. There's a lot of great individuals, a lot of great thought leaders in the room. I
Wow.
really felt proud to be in that room and to meet some colleagues from all across the country that I'd never met. Getting ideas from them, getting thoughts,
Yes.
hearing thoughts. That was that's big. So right now, as far as the bank,
Mhm.
we've only been open. We got approval in January. We've only been open the door since May. Uh, we are starting to make the impact. We're starting to work with individuals in church groups. We're starting to work with fraternities, sororities, uh, to see what kind of needs they have. I've got the lending box wide open, so we've been lending to small business owners and helping them navigate the space with their supplier diversity programs.
Mhm.
So we're just beginning, but so far since May, I think we booked about $20 million worth of loans,
Oh, that's
and we've got a
excellent.
pipeline of about $20 million. So
Congratulations. That's great.
yeah, and our board is behind it. Uh,
Hmm.
they are they are they're for it. We've got it now
Hmm.
that we just created where they can refer us business owners, other churches that we haven't touched, and other organizations that are like-minded for us to meet with. So that list is growing. So we've got a lot of folks that we haven't even had a chance to talk to yet.
Oh, that's great, Jordan. That's good news. And so let's go back to having the ownership. You went to this conference and you said there was 20 represented Black owned banks in one room. Give us some insight of the things that were said in that room that you can share. Give us the environment, I want to know what that was like, if you can describe that. And what came out of those meetings? What were some innovative ideas that came out of those meetings? What were the next steps? What were some of the best business practices shared among these Black-owned banks?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. So first of all, I went to a lot of bank conferences, since my early days in banking, and lots and lots of conferences in different specialized areas, but never was there a room that was as diverse as this one, because the National Bankers Organization also serves Hispanic-owned banks, Asian-owned banks.
Wonderful.
So other minorities that fit into what they call the Minority Depository Institution. So they fit into that Minority Depository Institution. MDI is shortening this, what they call it. The leadership there was great. The chair of the National Bankers Association is a very talented young man. The female that runs the organization is an awesome female. She's very smart and bright. She's connected. We had a lot of resources in the room. We had the regulators coming in to talk about different things that were going on, like this whole CRA reform that just got published yesterday. Talked a little bit about that. But most of the meeting, I would say, was centered around how we market stronger, how do we get better. Basically a Black-owned bank or Hispanic-owned bank, there's no difference in any other bank other than who we serve. We got same regulations, we got the same capital requirements. We don't get any shortcuts. There are no easy ways to do this. We're subject to the same regulatory agencies that every other bank is subject to. So we shared a lot of different ideas around credit, how we structure our deals. We talked about how we make our communities different. We talked about different types of products and services that worked in different markets. So there was great idea sharing. And I got to meet a lot of people face to face for the first time, because up to that point, I'd met people Zoom calls. And this was really one of the very first live meetings I had with this many Black professionals.
Yeah,
specific in banking.
Absolutely. I can only imagine the environment of that. Going back to the fact that you said also what was represented was Hispanic-owned banks, Asian-owned banks, as well as Black-owned banks. What did you find was the common thread among the represented from the different segments?
Yeah, each one has a different community values. So things that I think some of the things that we value are slightly different. We all value pretty much the same thing. I mean, we want to, in my opinion, it kind of works like this, is how I say, how do you keep that dollar Black? How do we make sure that our Black-owned companies, our Black-owned institutions, our Black-owned nonprofits, our Black-owned, how do we make sure that they know that they have the resources and that they can actually support other Black-owned businesses? And there's nothing wrong with that. Our ice is as cold as anybody else's ice. Our products and delivery are just as good as anybody else. I always preach we need to be more tolerable of our own. So, I mean, I just had a situation yesterday where there was a mistake that was made on an account. And the guy said, call the CEO, call Jordan, rather than, calling the office manager outside that would fix it. No, you go to the top. That's their mentality when they deal with, that's Black people's mentality when we deal with other Black people. We have to, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have errors. We're going to have problems. Everything's not going to be perfect. Well, the goal is to make it right when it does go wrong.
That's right.
But we go to a Black restaurant and we give them one chance. That server's taking too long. I'm out of here. And we're kind of tough on each other. We call it the Black tax. And that's something that I don't know how to solve that. How do each other to trust each other more? How do we how do we make it so that we're more comfortable with each other, that we tolerate each other's services, that we give you a second chance because you made a mistake? Because we sure do that. We go to McDonald's or whatever, and everyone's had a bad McDonald's sandwich. I mean, I don't care who you are. You've gone to one and they had the stale burger, and that's the one you got, the last one.
That's right. That's right. But you go back, right? Over and over. That's true. That's true. So what did you find are you saying that is our culture as Black-owned, Are you finding the same with Asian owned, Hispanic owned? Are you finding that they're more tolerable of?
That's a good question. I really don't have any precedent on that. What I had an experience early in my banking career, and I had a gentleman. I thought he was Jewish. He was a banker, and the reason I thought he was Jewish because his whole clientele was mostly Jewish business owners. And I was quizzing him about that one day, and I said, tell me more about how to work with the Jewish community and what do you find? And he said, Jordan, you won't believe this. He says, I had this experience where one of my Jewish business owners couldn't make his payment. He came to me and said, not only can I make the payment, but I'm going to need to close my business down. But I'm going to pay you back. And he said, can you give me some more time? And the guy said, yeah, how much time do you need? He said, well, I need about 90 days and I'll come in and I'll pay this loan off fully. Well, somewhere before that 90 days was up, this Jewish guy came with like 10, 15 other Jewish business owners with him. And all of them individually gave that banker a check to pay off this Jewish guy's business.
Wow.
And it just shows how connected their community is. And they've had similar hardships that we've had.
Yes.
They've had similar challenges that we've had. But they've come together and I don't want to say that it's going to be that easy for us to do the same thing, but ideally, I'd love to see us working that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I relate to your answer. And I would say that we've had the opportunity to deal with a lot of Asian-owned businesses, and I feel that that's part of their culture as well. Not saying it's not in other cultures, but I just close up and personal, I feel like they do come together as a community quite nicely.
I agree.
And collaborate well. I wanted to go back to oh goodness, Jordan. I wanted to go back to when you were. This is the question I wanted to ask. Jordan, tell the listeners, why is it important for us to support minority-owned businesses? For those out there that are looking and they're saying, what difference does it make as long as, we're all supporting business? Why is it important that Black-owned businesses become established? How's that a win-win for everyone?
Yeah, well, here's how I thought it through. So when we were forming the bank, and decided after George Floyd that one of the biggest issues that we had was access to capital, building wealth. We didn't have home ownership rates like others had. Our net worth is about 10% of theirs. So our average household net worth in the Black community is somewhere along about $17 million. The average net worth for a white-owned family is 10 times that amount, about $170,000. And so that was the delta. That was, how do you solve that? Well, one of the things that we haven't supported each other's businesses. Now, I know there's exceptions to that, and there's a lot of great Black-owned businesses that are supported by Blacks. In general, we're more likely to take our dollar out and spend it somewhere else, and it's because we don't have Walmarts, we don't own Home Depots, we don't own places where we go and shop, we don't own a Kroger store or a big grocery store, so a lot of our dollars are expended outside into communities into stores like that we have to go buy goods and services from. But when we create opportunities for each other, that's when we have to follow through. So one of my big visions for the bank was this concept of not just home ownership, but investor real estate owner. And so there are a lot of entrepreneurs in our community. Many of them own a double, and they live on one side and they rent out the other side, and that rent typically covers their rent or their payment, their mortgage payment. And something goes wrong next door, like light bulb goes out, they go change the light bulb, or there's a plumbing leak, they go fix the plumbing. Little minor maintenance things they can do on their own. But my goal is to say, I want you to own 20 units. I want you to own 30 units or 50 units, whatever your capacity is. I want to help you find a way to get there if that's what you want to do. And once you do that, now you can't go ping one of those units when they're turnover. You can't put carpet down. You can't do roofing. You can't do electric, plumbing, and all that. You can't do landscaping for all of those units and cut the grass and keep the properties looking good. But guess what you need to do? You need to hire other businesses to do those for you, property management. And why can't those businesses use Black painters, Black plumbers, Black electricians, Black landscapers, Black roofers, Black wall plasters, and everything, none of those skills, none of something that we can't do. Why don't we have companies like that? And why don't we support those companies? Why can't we grow that ecosystem? So that's kind of the vision that I had to get us to work with each other. And so we're working through those issues now. We're still early, but that's one of the things we hope to accomplish is to get all of those support businesses. And when a person come in and say, "Hey, look, I want to buy that 8-family over there," and I'll say, "Look, who are you going to use to fix the drywall and the plaster and the paint, do the painting and do all that stuff for you?" Well, I don't know that yet. Well, look here, I'm going to give you a list of Black-owned companies that we would support. You don't have to use them; it's up to you. But if you tell me that you're going to commit to using these companies, maybe I can give you a discount on your loan rate. I can take a few basis points off, 25 basis points off if you agree that you're going to have this commitment. Like I say, I can't make you use them, and there's got to be more than one Black paint company. There's got to be more than one Black electrician, right? But that's, to me, that would be an incentive to help us understand how we support each other and the fact that we do good work. Our Black electricians are as good as any other. Our Black plumbers are as good as any other. You know, our painters are. We've got all the tools and we've got all of the skills. And why don't we use each other? And so that's what we're trying to drive.
So Jordan, with that perfect vision, if it was, doing what it's supposed to do, we're using other, how is that a win for those of non people of color? How is that a win for everyone?
To me,
for that to work in that kind of to work in that kind of formality. How is that a win for everyone?
Yeah, well, I think they've gone with this trickle down theory forever, right? And that hasn't trickled down to us. And when it gets down to us, there's nothing left from the trickle down theory. This is a trickle up theory that I'm proposing. Right. We start at the bottom. We start where we are. We start with the skills that we have. And as we make a contribution to our neighbors, guess what? We start owning things. What happens when we start owning? When we start owning, we start taking care of it. We start building. We start investing in it. Just like any other group. I mean, if you own your home and you live on a block full of homeowners, you're not going to let that crime come in your community. You're not going to tolerate somebody throwing trash out their window. You're not going to tolerate people that don't act properly and don't conduct their businesses properly. We self-police. We contribute to society. If we contribute, there's some numbers out there that shows that if that gap between Black wealth and white wealth was reduced, it would add over $1 trillion to our economy. I think that'd be good for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There you go. That's the answer. Absolutely. What strategies are in place to ensure the success of your bank ownership? And it doesn't have to be specifically to that, but what are overall strategies that you would educate our listeners on to ensure success of ownership, whatever that ownership is? But you can make it specific to the bank as well.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think one of the main strategies is, like I say, we empower people to build. We empower communities to build wealth. When we do that, there's what we find is that Black people are really, really good at skills. I have not met Black people that are deficient in any category of skills. They can, singers, they can sing with the best. If they're dancers, they can dance with the best. If they're plumbers, they are the best they can be at the elite part of that group. If they're bankers, they can be at the top of the game as well. There's nothing wrong with our skill set. There's nothing wrong with we can always learn. Our business owners and most small business owners need help. They don't need help making better pancakes. They don't need help making better clocks or better lamps or whatever the product that they make better. That's not where they need the help. Where they need the help mostly is really around how they keep their books and the financial savviness of preparing a budget and spending their money wisely and making sure that they're focusing on their business. I always recommend that business owners take at least one day out of the 30 days in the month, just one day, to look to see what they've accomplished, to set aside time. Did I hit my budget? Am I under or over? Why? To really do a variance analysis of those things. And then to ask themselves every single month, how can I improve? How can I get better? If I missed the mark, what am I going to do next month to make it up? If I'm over the mark, how can I continue to be overperform? Was my budget low? Am I setting realistic expectations? But everything we do comes with literacy and financial training. So we talk about that. We're starting a program with the Columbus Public School System to help entrepreneurs understand the numbers.
Absolutely.
And so we think that's just an important ingredient in the business. Your skills are probably good enough. Your drive and ambition are, that's up to you. But the numbers in the business is something you really have to understand. And where am I spending my money and how am I spending my money is very, very important for us to understand.
Absolutely. And I love that you're saying that just one of your strategies is early education. It's deeper into the pipeline, preparing them to understand the numbers, that the numbers do tell a story, and you need to understand how to get that story out and understand what the next steps would be.
That's perfectly said.
Yes, absolutely. Very good. What part of your upbringing played a role in your success, Jordan?
Well, sometimes I don't always give credit to this, but I had a great mom and I had a great dad. And my mom, she was a penny pincher of the family. So I grew up in a household with 4 boys and 4 girls. I was the oldest boy. I was the 3rd oldest child. So I had 2 older sisters, and it was me, 2 younger sisters, and then 3 boys after that.
Where'd you grow up, in Ohio or?
I grew up in Ohio.
Okay.
I grew up in Ohio in a working class community called Milo Grogan. That's really right around the corner from where the bank is here.
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
And yeah, so but that discipline, that early on saving. My mom was just a penny pincher, a saver. And every buy you had to have a reason. You could not just go spend frivolously. We had an allowance every week. And the older you got, a little bit more of your allowance. So I had one of the bigger allowances. And so I could afford to go to a movie theater once a week or once in a while. But when I ran out of money, it wasn't like I could go back to the well and say, "Hey, Mom, I need a nickel to do this at school today to buy milk," or what. No, you had your allowance. If you spend it on something and you don't have enough money for it, then you have to wait till next week comes up for your allowance. So you're gonna have to make it through the end of this week without any more money, unless you can find a job or something. So, my dad, while not so much on the saving and financial side, just on the execution of businesses and how he treated people and how he did. My dad was a carpenter. That wasn't his day job, but on the weekends he helped families that needed, somebody needs a porch painted, or they need the steps repaired, or they need a roofing repair, or they had a little electric problem. My dad did all of that kind of stuff. He was a handyman. And so every Saturday morning, I was waking up really early in the morning to go on a job site with him to help somebody in our community. And I just learned how he treated people, how he talked to them, and how he worked for them, and how he made sure that the jobs that he did met the expectations. And I was just always proud to be with him wherever we were. He did a lot of volunteer work at the boys club back in those days. He didn't get paid for that. He just, after work, he went to the boys club and would help these young kids that many didn't have fathers at home. And he took them under his wing and taught them, how to be good men, how to be good young men, how to, taught them how to tie a tie, taught them how to walk. I took them to church with us sometimes, or took them home for dinner with us sometimes. So that's the kind of people they were. So I learned from all of that.
Right. You grew up with a great foundation. And I think that is the wealth of a great foundation. It's one of the,
Absolutely.
without the foundation, you could not have built what God has allowed you to build over these many years. And so I hold that in just complete admiration. So
Well, that was another big thing. Sorry I give honor to my God and glory
that's
to him, because
that's
we
right.
learned it early on Sunday. If you didn't go to church, well, guess what? You stayed in the house all day. You
Mhm.
didn't all of a sudden get less sick when everybody got home from church that you were too sick to go to. Nope,
That's
you
right.
stayed in the house all day.
That's right. That's right. There wasn't an option.
That's right.
I always say from week to week, the most important day for my children is when they go to church on Sunday. And we do not miss hardly at all for the simple reason it's the oxygen. It's what's going to get them through the week. We're hoping that we've taught that and that
That's
we've
great.
trained in that direction. So that's absolutely,
That
absolutely.
makes a lot of sense.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, my last question is what's the end goal, Jordan? Is owning the Black Bank the end goal? What is your next endeavor? What is the next I can just say what is the Lord downloading to you? What does this race look like?
Well, I thought I'd be a better golfer by now, but my golf game's getting worse and worse. So it ain't gonna happen. That ain't gonna happen.
That's not it. Okay.
I I don't know that this whole business of banking and leading the charge in the Black owned bank. I got a talented people that work with me. That
Mhm.
this could not be done without them. So that's for sure. We could not do this without the board support that we have and the people in our
Yes.
organization. I personally want to see us be successful. So a new bank starting in within 3 years, you have to get to profitability. And that's about, it takes, our business plan calls for us to start becoming profitable in 2.5 years. So we're going to burn through some money for a
Mm-hmm.
little while when we're going to recover it. We're slightly ahead of where we thought we would be at this time.
Wonderful.
So we're starting out in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been thinking a lot about how do we expand? How do we hit new markets? How do we help people, underserved people in other places in this country where there are no Black banks? So one of the strategies, and this is not fully vetted with the board, I talk about it a little bit, but we haven't fully vetted this as a formal strategy, is
Mm-hmm.
to try to hit those cities that would be most likely underserved and least likely to have a Black bank presence.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you go to Chicago or New York or Atlanta or DC, you're going to be able to find pretty much whatever you want to find. You'll
Mm-hmm.
find Black-owned businesses and banks. It's just the math numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so our strategy is not necessarily to expand to those markets, at least initially. Our
Mm-hmm.
strategy is to probably expand towards other smaller markets. So Cincinnati and Cleveland are both in our site. Their markets are similar size to Columbus. There are markets south of us that I would consider Louisville, Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
I have a place in Norfolk, Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
Richmond, Virginia, places like that that have a fairly heavy size Black population, but not likely to have a Black-owned bank there.
Yes.
So that's one of the things that we're discussing as far as the strategy and as far as the future. Uh, there are other Black-owned banks around the country. At some point in time, I think that we will get our heads together and see how we can make a bigger impact together. As we
Yes.
pull, we've got associations that we work with, and everybody's doing their part in their niche, in their neighborhood. But can we be more than that? So I'm not sure what the answer to that is right now, Lisa, but that's another thought. I think that my skills, I'll move outside of my area of expertise, which is financial business and financial and looking at numbers and that whole thing. That's kind of where my background is. So, I'm a listener, and I know that over the years I've helped many business owners. Some of these businesses did not have two nickels to rub together when they started, and some of them are a big $20-30 million business today. Some of them are bigger than that. So I know that there are many, many things that can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever we are, wherever we need to help, if I can lend a hand, that's where I'm going to be. And I don't know where that is. I'm going to say that it's going to be, for me, it's going to be in banking. It's going to be in financial services today. Who knows? We could expand outside of that.
I believe that, Jordan. In the short time I've been with you, you have definitely inspired me. And, oftentimes we need to surround ourselves with those that help us, continue to see the clearer picture of where we believe God's leading us. And so, our realm is commercial real estate, and making sure that we are doing our best to leave an indelible mark in this industry of helping other minority firms and hiring minority businesses to work on projects. And you definitely me that as we look in the horizon, that we're doing the right thing. So I just want to thank you again for being a guest. It was a very rich interview, and I'm looking forward to the listeners really learning from this interview and understanding just why the importance of what you're doing. It's not just having a Black-owned business, but it's a win-win for everyone. It's something that uplifts our whole nation, for everyone to be able to establish a strong foundation financially in business. Hispanic-owned, Asian-owned, Black-owned, and non-color-owned. All of it's
Absolutely.
important. So
100%.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jordan. And I look
Thank
forward
you.
to getting to Ohio and having dinner with you personally, or you coming to Texas if you're ever in
Okay.
Texas.
Well, we can make that happen. I
Let's
love
make
that.
that happen. I'd love for my husband and I to sit down with you. And
That would be wonderful, Lisa. And thank you so much. Your professionalism and helping me bring out the thoughts was very invaluable. So obviously you're very experienced at this, and I look forward to looking at this myself. So
well, I thought it was wonderful. And you know what? We might be calling you next year for a part 2. There's just some guests just need a part 2. And I just want to hear the update. So we'll be doing that. And
that makes sense. I'm sure we'll have plenty.
All right. Okay, Jordan. All right. Take care.